Hi, welcome to my game, Not Mushroom. I'm just going to quickly play through the game and then I'll talk about the coding and stuff that I used to make the game. Okay, so the way I have created most of the obstacles in my game is basically just physics-based stuff. So these logs are just combined together using joints, and that just gives them like a bouncy feel, which is especially useful for the springboard that I made over here. And the other obstacles are just physics blocks that I've created. As for the background, I have three background images that I just kind of use an array to teleport them from one side to the other when you continue on. So when you get about here, the one on this side will teleport over to this space here. So we'll have a look at the code for all that now. So I'll start off with the character controller. Up here I just have all my classes for all the stuff that I've used in here, and I'm also calling some of the stuff from my level manager. All of my code has things called from the level manager, stuff like that. I'm just setting my stuff here. At the start of the game I use my set score text function that I've defined at the bottom. Down here I've set my velocity to 0 in the update just so that it makes sure that I'm not moving when I'm not moving. When I use the R key, I've just set a thing here, so if I get stuck or if something happens that's not supposed to happen, you can just press R and it'll just wipe the scene, so you can start again from fresh. For movement controls, I've used velocity, so I've got a speed that is defined in Unity as a variable that you can just change. So I've done input get key right arrow, and that'll just set your velocity to that value, which because it's on axis, putting it as a plus value will move it right, and then down here I've got a left arrow that does minus that, so that'll move it left because it's going minus that value. For the jumping, I've actually used add force instead of velocity because all of my platforms and stuff like that are all physics based stuff. So if I use velocity, it would just set my speed to a set number, but with add force, if I've already got upwards momentum from my springboard, for example, it'll add on to that, allowing me to go further. So for this I've got a bool, so if it's grounded and the spacebar is pressed, then you can jump, and if it's not grounded and you press the spacebar, nothing's going to happen because it needs to have both of these conditions to meet that. So once you've jumped, it obviously sets grounded to false, so you can't double jump well in there and stuff like that. I've also got this piece of coding here which calls the respawn from level manager. This is just for when you fall off the map or down one of the holes. So if the rigid body's Y axis is below 9 or 9, then it just calls the respawn and sends you to the last checkpoint. I've also got this is my code for setting the true or false value. So if you're on collision, so if you're touching any object with a wall tag, then you're unable to jump because it's set to false, and if you're touching any object with a ground tag, you're able to jump because it sets it to true. This is just the code for colliding with coins that I thought would be easier to put in here because it's actually the character that collides with the coin, so I've just done it that way. So on trigger enter, because the coins are on trigger, so you don't have an awkward bumping into them when you collect them. Anything with a coin tag, so all the coins have the coin tag, destroys the other game object, the coin you're hitting, calls the add score function and the set score text function, which I'll explain down here. So the set score text, it just changes the UI text to have score space, and then plus whatever the current value stored in the score is. And to add on score for collecting the coins with the add score, I've just got score equals score plus 10, so you get 10 for a coin. And when you actually die and respawn, you can do min score, which will just do score minus 5 pretty much. So in the level manager, I have all the stuff that I'm calling from, and here this is just for loading the first level, and this is for the quit, which is only that's only really used for the quit in the start menu, and this is just for loading the first level, which is only really used in the start for the game as well. This is the respawn function though, so this is used for teleporting the player to the current checkpoint position. It also, when you respawn like that, because you have died, it automatically runs the min score from player controller, so it takes away 5 points and then automatically sets the text and updates it as well. So all I have to do is hit respawn and it'll do all 3 of those for me. In the kill player, I've actually added this script to all objects in the game that will kill the player, like spikes. It just on trigger enter, so if you enter the trigger box of the spikes, and I've set it to know that it's the player name, so when the player enters the trigger box of that, it will hit the respawn function and obviously do the minus and set the score as well, like that's in the level manager. For the checkpoints, I've just got it so that when the player enters the trigger box of the checkpoints that this code is attached to, it runs the code to set the current checkpoint to whatever the position of this object is. This is the code that I used for the scrolling backgrounds. As you can see here, I've used an array for this, and I have actually attached the coding for this to the parent object that contains all 3 of my backgrounds, and then use child count to put those 3 objects into the array that I have. For actually changing where the background goes, I've got the scroll left and the scroll right function. If the player goes in, the X position of the player goes too close to the left of where the last background on the left is, it will scroll left, which will put the one on the right to the left and make that the new left one, so that if you keep going left, it will then do it again. And then the same thing for the right, except if you go to the right, the furthest right one, and you go close to the edge of the first right one, it'll take the one on the left and put it over. These are the functions I've got for scroll left and scroll right. As you can see here, I'm using the length of the backgrounds themselves to determine how far I should be moving the background from left to right. So I have the length of the background defined in Unity, and then when you need to move one of the backgrounds on the left or the right, it times it by the actual length of the background and then moves it by that much so that it perfectly fits in with the other ones. And it's just the same thing for moving it left and right, except in this one I'm doing minus minus, and this one plus plus, and obviously the left and rights are switched around. This is just a piece of coding that I used for the final part of the game where you get to the chest and your family. It's just added onto the hitbox there, where it just loads the next level. This is a bit of coding that I actually made for the camera to make the camera follow the player without just putting it in as a child of the player object, which just continuously updates and transforms the position of the player to the position of the camera to the player. But the way in which I've made my game, it didn't look very nice having the camera follow it around like that, so I just decided to set it up as just being a child of the actual player parent. Well, that's all my game. Thanks so much for watching.